A man of various hats, a Pan-African, a statesman, an educator, somebody who's been credited with being a pioneer of sorts. Today on the African Footprints podcast, we're going to take a delve into the life of an extraordinary man. But before we go any further, my name is TJ Enos Airo, and it's my delight to welcome each and every one of you to African Footprints podcast.
On some traditional concept to life, it must not just be imported from outside. For example, we are clan-minded, we are tribal-minded in that we are communal in our concept of life. Now, it is necessary that our new institutions are based on this approach, what we have called in our definition of African socialism, mutual social responsibility. That is, that a person is not just an individual, he is part of a system, he is part of a community. He has responsibilities within that community. He has duties to perform in that community. But in turn, the community has also got responsibility to him. They have duties towards him and his children.
In the sisal farms in Juja, born to Leonidas Ndiege and Marcella Onyango, is none other than Thomas Joseph Odhiambo Mboya. Today it's a privilege because this is my namesake. I'm also called TJ, by the way. So TJ Mboya, born on August 15th, 1930, a man of consequence. He was born in a sisal farm, as I've mentioned, grown and bred in a place where he'd see workers working on the sisal farm. It was a colonial farm, so I bet something intrigued him on those farms. He'd looked at the conditions to which the workers were exposed to and maybe triggered. But before we go there, let's go somewhere. Let's go to his education. TJ Mboya was taken to a couple of Catholic mission schools. In 1942, Tom Mboya joined the prestigious St. Mary's School Yala. For all those who attended St. Mary's School Yala, I know you're nodding your head right now. That's why he pursued his early high school education and later on joined in 1946 Holy Ghost College, which was later renamed to Mangu High School. So for all those that attended Mangu High School, shout out to you as well. So his early education, he was a bright and brilliant, intelligent young gentleman, and his intelligence brought him to the fore of very many discussions. Earlier on, he took on debating because his oratory skills could not be hidden. And it is on this premise that Tom Mboya found a scholarship. His education acumen, his ability to comprehend things, landed him an opportunity to attend the Ruskin College in the United Kingdom. In the United Kingdom, his ability to comprehend what was happening within the country really formed within him. It was a season before independence. And during this season, there were also discussions that were starting to arise in terms of the Pan-African movement. Quickly forward, Tom Mboya later on graduated from Ruskin College and came back to Kenya. Tom Mboya's political life is an interesting journey. His political life commences right before he even pursues his further education at Ruskin College. His political journey starts with him being appointed as a medical officer, a sanitary medical officer in Nairobi City Council. And this prompted Tom Mboya to understand the environment in which he found himself. Exposure is something quite critical in this journey because Tom Mboya understood the very essence of what it means to be free, having been exposed to jurisdictions and countries where freedom was not a luxury, but instead freedom was a right enshrined in the various constitutions all over the world. This brought him to a place of thinking, why is it not happening in Africa and other parts of the world? So Tom Mboya made various friends. He was friends with the likes of Martin Luther King Jr., a civil rights movement leader in the United States of America. he had various engagements with them. And this very heart of liberating his people from colonial patronage, he brought it back to Kenya. Now, this discussion now takes on a different tangent, because now Tom Mboya, having interacted with the likes of Jomo Kenyatta, they started rallying themselves around movements that would try to agitate for independence in Kenya. TJ Mboya is a figure that we cannot forget. This is because TJ Mboya was quite passionate about trade unions. In earlier discussions as we started off, I'd mentioned that he grew up in a sisal farm. And I bet you this formed the very backdrop to which enabled him to understand the dynamic even when it comes to labor. So he was a big champion of proper labor laws and exercising agitation through picketing and such movements to enable the trade unions to also have good labor institutions, not only in Kenya, but also in Uganda and also Tanzania, even in Africa. He interacted with the likes of Kwame Nkrumah. And at the age of 28, at the convocation hosted by Kwame Nkrumah, Tom Mboya was able to be the chairperson of that African Congress, where he led discussions when it came to, independence and the importance of Africa growing into its true purpose. After gaining popularity from his labor movements and his civil rights agitations, Tom Mboya also came to Kenya in 1956-1957 and was elected as a member of the Legislative Council, popularly known as LegCo. So Tom Mboya became among the first members of parliament representing the Black or African constituent in Kenya's legislative branch. However, Tom Mboya was dissatisfied with the status quo. He was a disruptor in nature. He could not allow the status quo to sit as is, and therefore, through his agitations, he called for more representation of Kenyans in the Legislative Council. And through this agitation, and through movements such as the Kenya African Union, as it then was known, Tom Mboya made a lot of diplomatic connections, particularly with other nations. And these agitations eventually bore fruit. So today, for members of parliament or for aspiring waheshimiwas, you ought to remember that such people, through the agitations, were able to let us enjoy the liberties that we enjoy today. And we cannot talk about Tom Mboya without forgetting the airlift program. We wouldn't have Barack Obama as he is if it were not for efforts such as the airlift program. Did you know that Barack Obama Sr. was a beneficiary of the airlift program, and by consequence allowing him to also enjoy education abroad, which eventually led to Barack Obama Sr. meeting Obama's mom? Well, if you didn't know, now you know. Did you know that Wangari Maathai was also a beneficiary of this airlift program? Wangari Maathai has been lauded for various activities within the environment space. She even earned a Nobel Peace Prize towards the effect of her agitations when it came to environment and making sure that we're living in a sustainable environment, an environment that pays attention to also future generations. All these are efforts that we appreciate through the airlift program that many Kenyans have since benefited from. On top of the education opportunities that were opened up by the airlift program, Tom Mboya did not at any given point in time forget about the independence struggle. And on this account, Tom Mboya, alongside other Kenyans, also remembered the importance of having diplomatic connections and also conversations. And this led to the Lancaster House conferences. These are conferences in which Africans went to debate and also engage concerning the independence of Africa from Britain. And from these discussions that were had at the Lancaster House Conference, we now celebrate independence in 1963-1964, when also Kenya became a republic. In the newly independent country, Tom Mboya was appointed the Member of Parliament for Central Nairobi constituency, now known as Kamukunji constituency. Alongside being the Member of Parliament for Central Nairobi constituency, Tom Mboya was also appointed Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs, a docket that he held up until 1964, when the functions allocated to this specific ministry were transferred to the Attorney General, who then was Charles Mugane Njonjo. Tom Mboya was appointed the Minister for Economic Planning and Development, in which docket, being seconded by Mwai Kibaki, came up with instrumental policy plans to leapfrog Kenya from one place to another. This was the post-independent Kenya, and there were many aspirations, many ambitions that they had to make sure that Kenya becomes the beacon of hope in East Africa and also Africa. It is within this docket as Minister of Economic Planning and Development that Tom Mboya was able to come up with the sessional paper number 10 that would provide a roadmap that Kenya would take to prosperity. Remember, post-independence, Kenya had to grapple with certain issues, amongst which the teething problems that comes from a change of regime. I'd like to put your recollection that Kenya had been a colony of Britain from 1920, but now here, being handed the tools or the keys of independence, there was a big transition. And with this transition, economic policies were key that would eventually enable the various sectors to work in harmony for Kenya to become a prosperous country. And it is from this sessional paper number 10 that various developments, when it comes to education, when it comes to labor institutions, when it comes even to the very basic institutions such as the Social Security Fund, that would be able to assist workers in their time of trouble. And also remembering the importance of justice for workers. So even the labor courts, those industrial courts that would assist laborers to also channel their frustrations or to litigate for them to get reprieve. The sessional paper number 10 was a vision for the next couple of years, from 1964 to 1970, that would enable Africa to actualize its potential, and paying particular attention to Kenya. Within the duration of this session paper, the implementation of the same, it was credited to Tom Mboya that the country grew to about 7% when it comes to economic development. Rising so quick in the echelons of power, Tom Mboya triggered many to jealousy. A young man, a member of parliament for Central Constituency Nairobi, now known as Kamukunji constituency, and also a powerful minister holding a powerful docket. Tom Mboya had risen in rank, and in the corridors of power, there were echoes, whispers of this young man could be one day president. And some may even think that such echoes or whispers in the corridors of power might have led others to the place of taking Tom Mboya's life. At the loud sound of a gunshot, people gathered to try and understand what had just occurred. And there, as people gathered, there laid on the floor in a pool of blood, Tom Mboya. Quickly rushed to Nairobi Hospital, where emergency teams were trying to attend to Tom Mboya, but it was a little too late. Tom Mboya was declared dead on 5th July 1969, and Kenyans went into mourning. And immediately people scrambled to try and apprehend the person who had pulled the trigger. A man known as Nation. Nation was later on prosecuted in the court of law. In one of the proceedings in court, something caught the attention of people. Nation, who had been convicted of the murder of Tom Mboya, screamed out loud and said, "Mimi ni mtu mdogo tu, go to the big man." The proverbial big man was brought into the question. A question that still resounds in the minds of many people. Who is this big man? There have been conspiracy theories. A lot has been taken in terms of investigations that have never been conclusive. So this question still remains. Who was the big man? Nation was later hanged, but the story, the legacy of Tom Mboya remains. Here we stand on the legacy of a man whose efforts do not go unnoticed. Today we benefit from the gains from the labor institutions, even session paper number 10, and the Pan-African movements that began as a consequence of the efforts of a man. Of course, he was accompanied by his friends as well and other colleagues within his pursuit. But we cannot forget TJ Mboya. His statue remains as an embodiment of what he stood for, pointing towards the direction that Kenya should go, pointing towards the scaling that Kenya needs to achieve, the heights that Kenya needs to achieve. Some have said, possibly this is the best president that Kenya never had. But all the same, we celebrate this man today. And we do not forget the efforts that he put in that we may enjoy what we enjoy today. So there's a big lesson to be learned in Africa, that assassinations over the years have robbed us of brilliant minds. Assassinations have robbed us of people who would have been instrumental in helping our countries leapfrog to the next level. So as we stand on his legacy today, we are reminded as Africa, let us look out for intelligent people. Let us be keen to appreciate the plight of our doctors, to appreciate the plight of our teachers, to appreciate the plight of the various union movements, because the agitation is not in vain. We cannot sacrifice them on the altar of compromise. We cannot sacrifice them on the altar of corruption. Let us be keen to look at the labor laws. Let us be keen to look at the workers, even from the basic level of your household. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me on this journey. We've looked at the life of TJ Mboya, aka Tom Mboya. Like, subscribe, and follow for many videos informative in history when it comes to the account of people who left indelible marks in Kenya's history. I've been your host, TJ Airo, narrating the story of TJ Mboya.